Prime Minister Narendra Modi has left for France for a special visit to mark the 25 years of strategic partnership between the two countries. India and France have had traditionally a very close and friendly relations. In the year 1998, the two countries entered strategic partnership, which signifies convergence of views on a range of international issues apart from a close and growing bilateral relationship. The areas of defense cooperation, space cooperation, and civil nuclear cooperation constitute the three principal pillars of our strategic partnership. Apart from these traditional fields of cooperation, India and France are increasingly engaged in new areas of cooperation like climate change, sustainable growth and development, and international solar alliance as well. Indian Navy will add more teeth to its already formidable arsenal in the coming years, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi expected to sign a deal of acquisition of 26 Rafale marine fighters for INS Vikrant aircraft carrier and a repeat order of building 3 more Scorpene-class submarines at the Mazagon Dockyards Limited through Make in India. The repeat order for 3 Scorpene-class submarines through the government-to-government route will not only add muscle to the Indian Navy to take up the challenge of the Chinese PLA in the Indian Ocean region, but also give a new lease of life to submarine manufacturing capacity of MDL after INS Wagshir is commissioned in the year 2024. India and France have been closely collaborating on engines for advanced fighter jets and helicopters as part of India's self-reliance program in defense. India's Defense Research and Development Organization, the DRDO, and French firm Safran are engaged in these discussions with the aim of achieving a 100% transfer of technology. France is also likely to have a UPI system with India, the very first in Europe after Singapore, which will be a giant step on digital economy. India and France friendship in all aims to advance free, secure, and a stable Indo-Pacific. That's what the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said before departing for France for a very special visit. Mr. Chaudhary, Parmit Pal Chaudhary, sir, how important and crucial is this visit? We've seen in the last 25 years the strategic relationships really growing from time to time, but this is a significant relation. On different occasions, we've seen almost a blind strategic support from France, from the UNSC to the nuclear deal to even Kashmir. France has been an open support for India. So how significant is this particular visit, and particularly on the defense front, do we see making more important signatures there in France, or perhaps on the transfer of technology as well, making more strides?
Yeah, I think the real reason why this trip, as is true for a lot of the trips that Prime Minister Modi is making overseas, is significant, is that the geopolitical circumstances that in many ways were stable over the past 2 decades have changed significantly. The rise of China is now overwhelmingly India's primary strategic concern. France has been an Indo-Pacific partner, especially an Indian Ocean partner for us. It's the only European nation with a genuine military and physical presence in the Indian Ocean. But France hasn't necessarily been that open about taking on China. And we can see that China, they accept that China is a competitor and a problem, but perhaps do not completely agree with us yet, or are not aligned with us as to the degree of the threat that we see in China, not just militarily, but in terms of technology and economically. And I think we're going to see a lot more, negotiations on that front. The second part is the decline of Russia. Russia is now much reduced in terms of its symbolic power after its problems in the Ukraine. But more importantly is that increasing evidence, especially we talk to Indian officials, of Russia's losing its ability to maintain an independent line of action from China. If that continues, then India will obviously going to have problems in maintaining the kind of high-level relationship it has with Russia. This opens up a very different kind of relationship with France, because more so than any other Western country, France is in many ways capable of filling in the blanks that our Russia relationship could possibly leave behind. They have a nuclear submarine capacity, both ballistic and attack. They have nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. They have an entire panoply of weapons without the kind of restrictions and problems in accessing technology that the United States, for example, has. The only other country in the West that has similar array of technologies. So this is one of the things we're going to be talking about, I think. And my understanding is there has been continuing negotiations, especially on the issue of submarines. When Prime Minister Modi was supposed to have gone to London for the G7 summit, that was canceled. He couldn't go. He had to go virtual because of the COVID issue. On his return trip, he was supposed to stop at Toulon in France to see the launching of the latest Barracuda nuclear submarine. And in fact, I think was going to be shown a tour of that submarine for a very obvious reason. The French wanted to showcase these products. So this is the kind of thing we're now going to have to look at. In other words, take this relationship, already very solid, to a completely new level. And that's where to fit in with these new geopolitical circumstances.
Fair enough. But to get a perspective specifically on the defense ties, let me get in General Sanjay Meston here. General, how do you see the defense cooperation really growing? We've seen a lot of enthusiasm in India in the last couple of years on the Rafale, and now we see a reorder for the Rafale, particularly for the Indian Navy, the Marine, and of course the subs as well. So how do you see the defense cooperation growing from strength to strength?
Yeah, as regards defense cooperation is concerned, firstly, I must highlight one very, very important aspect before I answer your question is that we all are aware that India was quite dependent on Russia just maybe about 2 or 3 decades back. Actually, our entire inventory was of Russian origin. And I think post-Kargil, when I was myself in the Operational Logistics Directorate of the Indian Army as a Lieutenant Colonel, we did realize that the weapon systems and the spare parts and lubricants and greases were not forthcoming, and the Russians were actually causing us genuine problems. And since that time, we realized that we in India need to diversify our sources, and that itself is a great strength of security. And in the last 2 or 3 decades, or I would say 2 decades, we have diversified so much that we are getting weapon systems from possible all the leading countries of the world, including America, France, Germany, Sweden, Israel, and so forth. And with each country, we go in for the specialist systems which each country can offer to us. And today, with the Atmanirbhar Bharat concept and self-reliance, what Prime Minister Modi has been advocating, I think India has now gone very firmly on transfer of technology, and co-production is over. But now we are looking for co-development also. And therefore, today, whether it is France, whether it is United States, all these countries have realized that India's potential is far too much, and especially a youth, the IT youth and talented and the technical expertise what we have. Our youth is simply brilliant. And therefore, these countries have actually realized that to invest in India and to have transfer of technology and co-development, now focus is more on co-development of the critical technologies, emerging technologies. So I think on that account, I personally feel that India is doing exceedingly well by diversifying. And similarly, now with France, we have taken one of the best fighter aircrafts. We got the 36 Rafale. Now, as regards the defense cooperation with France is concerned, I myself as a colonel was handling the foreign division of the Indian Army. And I happened to travel to many other countries, including France, and we used to get their foreign chiefs also.
Right.
So most of the foreign chiefs, they used to highlight certain very good qualities of the Indian Army. Firstly, the regimentation. They were really proud of a regimentation. And that is what gives solid kick to our soldiers. We die for a regiment. An infantry soldier, for him, his platoon or regiment is so important. And these foreigners also realize the ethos, the values which we have imbibed over a period of time. And our training is so good. And our capability to handle all kinds of weapon systems from all over the world, from wherever we have got. And the technical expertise, including in the armed forces, of handling the latest equipment, whether it is electronics or anything. So therefore, these countries have realized our potential. And coming on to France, we are aware about the Rafale, and now we are also planning, I'm quite sure they are going to offer the Rafale M for the Indian Navy, which is required for our aircraft ships. So this will increase our potential and we'll enhance our homogeneity, because it's not only the aircraft, the spare parts, the MRO, that is maintenance, repair, overhaul. All these facilities now France would be compelled to give to us, and we will be doing everything jointly.
Right.
So I think in every manner, then Scorpion deal, as it is the sixth Scorpion submarine is going to be out. So in every manner, we are benefiting, and not only that, we are doing joint training and counter terrorism. We are sharing intelligence. And I think the previous speaker did mention about, that they have taken a very positive stand towards India on Kashmir, etc. And therefore, ward of counter-intelligence, counter-terrorism, we have to have the intelligence sharing, joint training, sharing of information. All these aspects are focused onto. So
fair
to
enough,
sum it
fair
up,
enough. You make a strong point, General, talking about the potential in the relationship, and also about the Rafale and the subs that will really add to India's arsenal. But I will come to you and of course Mr. Chaudhary as well on the jet engine, on the transfer of technology and the technicalities of it all. But I want to get in Shairi here, who's been studying Europe very closely and trying to understand the perspective of these relationships. Shairi, we were speaking earlier in the day as well, where you mentioned that, this is a very strong partnership, but there is much more to do as well, particularly on trade. How would you define these 25 years of strategic cooperation between India and France? What are we really looking towards in the next 25 years now?
Well, I think, of course, we know this year marks the 25th anniversary of the strategic partnership. And, this was India's first strategic partnership that was signed in 1998. In total, India has about 35 of them, and the first one was signed with France. So that gives us an indication of how much value India attaches to this relationship, how continuous that value has been. And I would say that this is a very wholesome, all-encompassing relationship that spans, collaboration across a range of sectors, including, of course, security and defense, but also things like climate change, energy transition, the blue economy, counterterrorism, and even multilateralism. Defense is, of course, the strongest pillar of the partnership. But when it comes to things like climate change, India and France launched the International Solar Alliance in 2015, which now members about 100 odd countries. There's also cooperation on the multilateral front, where France supports India's bid for a permanent seat at the UN Security Council. And even on counterterrorism, both India and France have been fighting this aspect together. France has also been supportive of India's concerns, be it at the United Nations or, at other international bodies like the Financial Action Task Force. Another important way that India and France are cooperating is through trilateral partnerships that have recently been signed with like-minded countries such as Australia and the UAE. And I would say the real aim of these partnerships is to really address security issues, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region. And in this context, the two countries, are funding development projects in the region together. They're conducting military exercises together, and they're trying, in a sense, to cooperate on solving even global challenges together. But yes, you mentioned the area of trade, and I would say this is where the relationship perhaps has lagged behind a little. Last year, bilateral trade, between India and France stood at about $16 billion, which has increased year on year consistently, but it still does lag behind its potential. And I think this visit by Prime Minister Modi also intends to address this lag. There's a CEO's business forum that is being planned with heads of business participating from both sides. But I would add that, the real boost to trade between India and France would actually come from the conclusion of an EU-India FTA. And negotiations for this were relaunched last year, and several rounds have already been conducted. And I think this is where the real untapped potential can be unleashed.
Well, certainly a great potential on trade as well. But will that happen? There is a beginning that is being made with the CEOs meeting that will be taking place with the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and, of course, the French President as well. Let's wait for that meeting to take place and to get more details. But as I was mentioning, let's get into the technicalities as well. Let's get in Parmeet Pal Chaudhary yet again. Mr. Chaudhary, recently concluded US visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The big talking point was the transfer of technology. It was also about the jet engines and its production in India. There have been different statements that are coming in. The entire 100% sharing of technology hasn't really been mentioned anywhere. But will that at all happen? Perhaps time will tell. Again, with France, there have been discussions between the DRDO and Safran about transfer of technology. Do you think France increasingly realizes that this is something that India has been asking for, and perhaps there could be some consensus on that?
Yes, I think we've seen that there's at least some sort of a competition going on, which is good for India. We used to ask for help on request jet engine technology, and was generally received. This was either spurned, or the price tag that was offered was so incredibly high that it was obviously the equivalent of a no. Now we effectively have three offers on the table. We have the Americans, who have jumped in recently with the GE engine 414. We have had a Safran one, but which now seems to be much better than its previous versions. And we have a Rolls-Royce British offer as well for their next generation engine. So it is very clear that now for the Tejas 2 at least, Tejas 1 and 2, we will continue to use a GE engine, but those engines will now be manufactured in India. And this will give us the opportunity to master the technologies, the 11 technologies that the Americans have agreed to pass on to us. The next generation for our advanced medium combat aircraft, that engine is what we now need to be looking for a partner. And as I said, we now have three when we originally just had basically zero. So that's an excellent development for us. Which of them we will choose, I think, will depend on a number of factors: geopolitical, price, technology, but also which ones are technologically, should we say, which one is technologically more in line with our capacities. We have to recognize building a jet engine is incredibly difficult. The turbine, only 4 countries in the world today know how to make them. Countries like Japan and Germany, engineering superpowers, do not make jet engines. So this will be a major challenge, but it is good to have more offers on the table. I think Safran's advantage will be that because of our experience with the Mirages, which are also powered by Safran engines, we have already a reasonably large ecosystem of Indian contractors who are familiar with bits and pieces of the engine. But it is the top quality technologies, notably the turbine, which is not a piece of metal, it is actually a giant crystal, ferrocrystal, almost grown into that shape. These type of technologies will be a huge challenge for us. And which country helps us the most, or is technologies, or should we say, ones that we are able to absorb, and I think will be the crucial determinants of which one we have. But again, the more offers on the table, the better.
Absolutely. The more offers, the better. But of course, in particular, jet engine is something there are very few companies who have mastered it globally, perhaps only 4 companies in 3 countries. And there are others who have been doing the reverse engineering. Where India will set its eyes is perhaps to be clear in the next few months. But already there have been talks and signing of agreements in US, and perhaps there's one lined up in France as well.